been a while. Let's talk about progress thus far. So I've got basically not shaped, but I did have a little deflex here. Wanted to even it out so it didn't look weird when it was strung. And it was just simply a matter because it was so small of just clamping this, hitting with a heat gun to get that little bend out, and just putting a weight on this end. Simple, not rocket science. Then I went and I sized the bow. I didn't need to clean it or degrease it because this is maple. It's not Osage, so it's not much of an issue. It absorbs it. It was kind of a roughened to 80 grit standards. Sanded, so the sizing the glue is going to soak in. You could get highly technical. You could warm the bow so your hide glue or Sinew scrap glue doesn't gel right away, or use a thin mixture, or simply give a spritz of Dawn into your sizing mixture. It doesn't hurt the bonding, but it does allow it to soak in a little better. You know, anything helps. But again, hard maple, sugar maple, so it absorbs glue pretty nice. Now, as far as the sizing, I promised you that I was going to dye the Sinew with coffee. That's real life coffee. But I sized it with clear. Now, as far as the glue viscosity, it could be thinner than this, it could be a little thicker than this. It's not critical. It isn't. If it's thinner, you just size it with more coats. If it's thicker, you size it with less coats. I always suggest so. The first sizing of hide glue should be on the thinner side so it soaks in better, doesn't gel right away, so you don't just get a surface kind of thing going on. But I didn't use the coffee because when I'm sizing a bow, I slop it all over the edge because I want to make sure that I'm not skimping on the sizing. And because I'm dyeing the Sinew with coffee, you know, if I sized it with a coffee mixture, you would see coffee stains all over it. I just want the Sinew itself to be coffee stained. So I used just plain old uncoffeed hide glue. Now that it's approximately 65 degrees in here, and this is, I would say, jiggler, you know, Jello jigglers. It's about that consistency. It's not hard, which if it was a thicker hide glue mixture, it would be hard at 65. And it's not like melting in my fingers. Kind of jiggler quality, but again, that doesn't matter. Now, this is something I thought about. I was pondering this. This group of fibers that I prepared will have glue in them from soaking. It's just, you know, don't want to confuse you too much, but a lot of the bonding action, because I'm only going to use one layer of Sinew, will be due to the sizing. You wet your Sinew, you've got some glue in it, but the sizing plays an important part. I want to, my finger's stuck. Glistening, shiny. I don't know if you can see that. I'm seeing what you're seeing right now. But take my word for it. There's a decent amount of sizing on that. This is going to melt in. It's going to be super wet. Now, this is my double boiler kind of arrangement. Saucepan. Then this inner bowl with the glue. Water in the pan. You would typically heat it up over it like a hot plate or a stove or whatever. Hot plates are good because they can be right in your work area instead of heating it up, going to your work area. It cools down. You got to put it back on the stove. The hot plate can be more consistent. For those newbies out there, you don't want that glue mixture so hot that it burns your fingers because that's enough heat to shrivel your Sinew. You don't want to walk around with shriveled Sinew, do you? But I made the mistake. I'm admitting this. I had my glue pot in here. It sat a while. Molded in the refrigerator. If you are going to go long periods with your hide glue sitting in the refrigerator, you might as well, if you have to, you can usually peel it out there. warm water, like a Jello mold, peel it out, put it in a bag and freeze it. It'll last a lot longer. But anyway, it's enough admitting my failures here. I am going to mix the glue to soak my sinew. Here's advantages. Instead of using the standard method, I've got my double boiler on my hot plate. Grab a little bundle. Doing this with one hand. Let's see here. Don't want to mess it all up. A little bigger than I normally use. Stick it in the glue. 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 20. Put it on the bowl. Instead of doing that, I'm getting away from the whole double boiler thing. I'm doing it, again, maybe more like a lot of original peoples did it. Where this stuff, after sizing the bowl, is just soaking. It's just soaking in a mixture. It's soaking in a bowl made out of stone, or it's soaking in a birch bark container, or it's soaking in the bladder of an animal. In my case, I usually use a Ziploc bag, or I could use this thing, the whole bunch of it. And then you just carefully pull it out as you need it and stick it on the bowl. Getting kind of ahead of myself here. You have to be careful that you pull it out in a way that you're not messing up your bundle, or else you're just going to have a rat's nest and you're just going to be picking through it, which doesn't stop you from seeing you backing a bowl. It just is a bit of housekeeping. But I like soaking it just sitting in a mixture that's thin enough to be gelled at 70, 75 degrees. If you have to, you can just put this in like the sink and run some hot water, or if you're using a Ziploc bag, which this isn't, and it gels at 70 degrees, just dip the whole bag in some hot water and it'll reliquefy again. I like that because if you have hard ends on your sinew, or it's a little stiffer in spots, if this is soaking for as long as it soaks for, a day, an hour, 4 hours, 6.5 hours, it's going to be so supple. And as sinew backers, you know what I'm talking about. The stuff will just lay down nicely and stick. It also melts into the sizing a little better because it's so wet. But the reason why I think this is more original people style, just soaking the sinew in a gluey mixture, a thinner gluey mixture, so it doesn't require a double boiler. You don't need to have natural gas stove. You don't need to have electricity. It's just soaking in the back country, in the woods, in the village. Just pull it out and stick it on there. And plus, you don't need as much glue as you think you do to make this stuff work. But let's get into the mixture. This is all I have in here. I mixed just a little bit. That's not much. And typically, if I had, this is by volume. This is by volume, and I estimate it. 1 part volume of this to 2 or 3 parts water. And again, it'll work if it's 2 parts water. It'll work if it's 4 parts water. It's not critical. In fact, every so often, because of evaporation, you just have to throw some water in your pot. And you're not Mr. Science here. It's not critical. But I'm going to take about this much, which is not nearly enough to do a full bowl. You would almost have to have a full thing if you're doing the dipping method. And just imagine how much glue is going into that. And I am going to accurately measure. I'm going to do the whole thing here so I don't slap it all over. Whoa, I'm going to have to make another cup of coffee. That's probably enough. I don't know how many ounces it is. Don't worry about it. Don't get tripped up. That's going to die that nicely. And then I'm just going to put the whole wad in here. Just let it sit there. After it cools off, because that's hot coffee. I'm going to add exactly, I don't know, about using my old computer mind here. One heaping that size spoonful, that's going to be enough. We'll see. I'll let that whole thing just soak. I'll let these things like melt into that warm coffee. Let it sit room temperature and see what the state of its gelling or not gelling is. If it's completely soupy at room temperature, then I'll put a little bit more in here. But again, it's probably enough glue to soak into this stuff. That little thin sheet of jiggler and then a heaping spoonful of that into exactly that much. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to work out nicely. What message should you take from this? First of all, preparation of your bow. That's going to determine your success. Secondly, you don't need to use a double boiler. You don't need to use as much glue as you think you do. You have to have some glue in here. Or you can just let this whole wad sit in here and just pull it out as you need it and stick it on. Thirdly, typically, I would take the sinew and I'd wrap it over the bow. In this case, I'm not. When I lay this stuff on, I'm going to work from the end, start here, then I'm going to go to this end, and the sinew is only going to go to the tip of the bow. So how I'm going to arrange it is I'm going to pick through this, just picture that this is the wet stuff, and I'm going to get all the ends lined up, and it's going to be soaking wet here. Wring it out a little bit, and you see these ends, just pretend that it's dead flat here. Would it be? And I'm going to show you the process right up against that. It's going to be right up against the end, and I don't care if a little bit sticks over or not, because first of all, it's not a lot of activity happening here in the tips, so it doesn't need to wrap around and be wound. Second of all, because I'm going to be using a nettle string, a natural string, over the tips, I'm going to have a nice cushion of rawhide, so I don't wear, I want smooth, so I'm not wearing down that natural nettle fiber. This isn't going to be B55 or B50 or whatever, Dacron. It's going to be a natural fiber, so I want to have those seats where that natural fiber string is as smooth as possible. So I'm going to use rawhide, and that rawhide will lock the ends of that sinew down nicely. I think I about covered it. I'm not going to put my sinew in there right away because it does take time for that fresh spoonful of hide glue flakage to stop being flaky, stop being like tapioca pudding, you know, those little nodules. It has to be smooth, because I don't want any roughness in there. And plus I want this to just sit until it reaches room temperature to see. It's just on the verge of gelling. So it takes a little patience. I got a little while to wait. Just gonna let that sit there. I'm gonna say adieu to you, and the next time you see me on this platform of YouTube, I'm gonna actually be sticking this stuff on here. I might be able to find a big Ziploc bag. I might just have this stuff bent inside here. I don't know. Not important. The important thing is that I'm going to be doing the sinew backing the wet method. That it's not gelled. I don't need a double boiler. I'm just going to drag out very limp sinew that's been soaking a long time, and it's going to lay down perfectly. Oh, how many tendons? 7. Will that give me 2 layers? No. It'll give me enough. it'll give me enough. To cover up the mistakes of cutting through growth rings, of grain, of bad knots, basically violating every rule of making a bow on this, as far as the back of this being just a disaster. But it'll work. That's all.